So with fluoroscopy, we know it to be dynamic imaging. All right, it's moving, it's live X-ray. All right, now it's under the control or the domain of the radiologist. You would think it's us, but it's actually under the control of the radiologist, even though that we can operate the equipment, and which we do. Now, in fluoroscopy, we use it for functional studies. Functional means you're looking at something as it moves and as it works. All right. So it can be used for both what's called diagnostic or functional purposes. All right. So you're looking at things to make a diagnosis, but you're also looking to make sure the thing is working as well. The object is working, whatever we're looking at. So with fluoroscopy, you can have a significant amount of dose. All right. So we'll talk about that today a little bit, but we're going to emphasize that on next quarter when we get into radiation protection. All right. Now with fluoro, it uses X-rays. Right? It uses X-rays. And when we talk about X-rays, we talk about MA, we talk about time, and we talk about KV. Correct? And we have SID as well. So with MA in fluoroscopy, the range is 0.5 to 5 MA. All right, so I'm going to erase that because it looks like weird sixes. All right, so 0.5. I did it again, didn't I? Man, 0.5 to 5 MA. So how does that differ from diagnostic X-ray? Well, in diagnostic X-ray, we have anywhere between 25 MA all the way to 1,000 MA, right? And that's because there's no intensifier tube. And plus, we can let the time run longer. So in time here, you can actually have seconds. We can have seconds. In fact, it can go to minutes of exposure. Now, when you take an X-ray using a fluoroscopic system, you have two different ways that you can let the X-rays go through the patient. It can either be continuous or constant fluoro, or you can do what's called pulse or intermittent. So I'm going to write that down. So there's two modes that we can do when we take an X-ray exposure. We can do continuous exposure, or you can do intermittent, continuous or intermittent, which is known as pulse. And it shoots small pulses, but very rapidly versus continuous. Which one do you think is going to have the most dose for the patient? Between continuous and intermittent, what do you think? It's going to be continuous, right? Because you're getting more radiation that's going through the patient versus blasts and pulses of X-rays. All right, so if you were to let it run either continuous or intermittent, but you get to a certain point of the exposure, that's a certain time, there's actually something called a cumulative timer on the system. All right, so cumulative timer. And the cumulative timer has an audible and a visual alert system. In fact, when you're doing X-ray in fluoro, you have to yell out fluoro on. That's in the reading. It says to announce fluoro on. You got to let people know that you're doing fluoro, right? Because that way, if they want to step back, they can if they're allowed to. Right? We're not talking about, sometimes the surgeons will be right in the mix, but sometimes if they can, they'll step away. So you have to yell out fluoro on. Now, there's a cumulative timer. The cumulative timer is going to go off after what time? What's the time that it goes off? That timer, a visual and an audible alert. Does anybody know what time it is? It's 5 minutes. Wow, that's crazy, huh, Mr. Round? So, ask Mr. Gomez, you guys, I'm not making this up. 5 minutes. Can we use up to 5 minutes of exposure? Yes. It's rare, but we do. If somebody is having a challenge, if the patient is having some challenges, the timer, the timing of the exam could be long, go into the minutes. But there's a cumulative timer that goes off after 5 minutes, and then we can reset it, and it goes back to 0, and then it goes off again. So there's a cumulative timer on that system. It uses kV, which is going to be kilovoltage. So we need kilovoltage because that's what's going to pull the electrons across, right? Is the kilovoltage. That's the force that's going to push the X-rays down through the patient. That's kilovoltage. And then we have SID. And remember, SID is SOD, source to object distance, right? Which in X-ray we called, no, not source to object distance, we called SOD. No? Let's see, SOD and OID is SID. Oh, now I know. I want you guys to know this term. That's what I'm going to say. Kilovoltage. So SID, we're going to change it up, and we're going to say source to skin distance and object image distance. So previously we said SOD, correct? But now we're going to switch it up, and we're going to call it source to skin distance instead of source to object distance. All right? So in fluoroscopy, we're going to use source to skin distance instead of source to object distance. All right? Now, in fluoroscopy, we said that you're going to be making X-ray exposures. Well, guess what? If you don't want to be messing around with the technical factors of MA and KV, there's something that I do, and I recommend that you guys do it as well, is use a function called ABC. ABC. Does anybody know what ABC stands for? Where's it at in the reading here? Is it in here? It's on page 454. All right. So ABC, what does it stand for? We'll give you a couple seconds. Stands for automatic brightness control. So what automatic brightness control is, it's like a preset technical factor that's built into the hardware, the system, the console, and it's going to go ahead and automatically default to a specific amount of brightness, which is going to be backed up by the amount of mass and kV for that exposure that you're doing. Sometimes they can call it ABS. It's in the reading right here on page 454. They have it under ABS, which is automatic brightness stabilization. It says automatic dose control, ADC, is a term as well. So we have to know ABC can also be known as ADC or ABS. I'm going to put that here. So it can also be called ADC or ABS. I use ABC when I discuss automatic brightness control. I think Mr. Gomez, I heard him say ABC as well. I don't hear too much ADC or ABS, but again, you have to know that there are going to be other terms related to that. So again, I wouldn't mess around with technique. I would go ahead and press automatic. All right. So this week in lab, we're going to go ahead, or next week when you guys come back, not this week, but next week when you guys come in for lab, we're going to turn on the machine and we're going to show you guys exactly where these features can be found on the system. Believe it or not, we're looking to buy another fluoroscopic system. This one is firing, but it's not translating the signal into images. So that's why we're looking to buy another one. But we can go ahead and show you on the console. And then when we get another one, we'll bring you back in the lab. But we can practice with this unit. It's still fully functioning. It just can't convert the signal into images right now. So again, we're in the process of purchasing another one. All right. So that way you guys can make the images as well. All right. So ABC is something that we're going to be using. Now, there's another feature I need you guys to understand. It's called last image hold, LIH. Stands for last image hold. So what do you think that means, last image hold? Well, instead of letting the X-ray exposure continue, the fluoroscopic X-ray continue, you can go ahead and take a snapshot, right? You can take a picture of what we're doing or what we just did, and you can save it on the screen. And it's called last image hold. And the doctor can use that as a reference versus letting that fluoro run. So it actually helps to reduce time. And you're going to find out that in your reading, it says that fluoroscopic systems, right, with the use of last image hold, intermittent pulse, ABC, it helps to reduce time as well, because you don't have to let the exam be as long, because we're getting the images faster, you're getting less dose, right? Again, it's going to save time overall as well. Now, let's keep going here. So we got ABC, we got last image hold. The other thing that we have to understand is that the fluoroscopic systems have a dead man type switch. Dead man type switch. What does that mean? Dead man type switch. It has to go ahead, right? The exposure requires that there's constant pressure, right? So when you hit the trigger, right, on the system, either you press two buttons, you hit, expose, or you press the trigger. There has to be a dead man type switch. It's required to have constant pressure. So there's a foot pedal that can also be used for fluoroscopic systems. So you can have a hand trigger with a cord. You can make an exposure from the unit itself, or you can go ahead and have a foot pedal. And there's also remote control fluoroscopic systems as well, where you can use a fluoroscopic. Sorry, my daughter-in-law. Hope she's okay. Um, you can use a fluoroscopic remote control system, which helps to minimize dose because you're further away and you can operate the fluoro unit remotely. It's pretty cool, actually. I've never had that. I'm not going to say I had the luxury of working that equipment. I always work with these older pieces of equipment that you would think that time forgot, that Rinkin and Edison designed themselves. All right, so we're going to go ahead and continue with this here. So we got dead man type switch. I'm going to go to another page here, and we're going to put here the use of a larger input phosphorus selection, a phosphorus screen selection, results in less magnification, and believe it or not, when you have less magnification, you have something that's called vignetting. You're going to have more vignetting. So vignetting, I wonder if it's in this textbook. I don't see it here, but I want you guys to Google vignetting. I know what it is, but it's a loss of brightness around the edges. But I want you to Google it so you can see what it looks like. So vignetting means you have a loss of brightness around the peripheral edges of the object. So when you have less magnification, you have more vignetting, and that results, more vignetting, and results in a loss of resolution. Spatial resolution. So believe it or not, magnification actually increases spatial resolution in fluoroscopy, not diagnostic X-ray. All right, so the use of a larger input phosphorus screen results in less magnification, more vignetting, and results in loss of spatial resolution, but less exposure. Now, it's less exposure not just to the patient, but also to whoever's in the room. All right, so just keep that in mind. All right, so remember we said that when you have a concave surface, it can result in distortion, and that distortion can be eliminated by using what's called a flat panel detector. So I'll finish with that here in just a minute, but I want to keep going with this here. So we said a larger input phosphorus screen selection results in less magnification, more vignetting, and results in spatial resolution, results in a loss. You gotta reread it. In a loss of spatial resolution, but less exposure. Less exposure is less dose. Your focal point will be closer to the output phosphor, and if your focal point is closer to the output phosphor, you're going to have more minification, which means more electrons reaching the output phosphor. And if you have more minification, you're going to have more brightness gain. You're going to have more brightness. Okay. Now, if you don't have enough x-rays, let's say you go rogue, you say, you know what, I got this. I'm going to set my own technical factors. And you don't have enough x-rays reaching the detector or reaching your fluoroscopic system, you're going to end up with starvation of mass. You're not going to have enough x-rays. You don't have enough signal. And your image is going to be grainy. So what did you guys learn from last week's lab? What was that term called when you have an insufficient amount of mass reaching the detector or the IR? What do we call that? And it results in graininess over the image. What was that lab that you guys did where you guys shot an x-ray of the lumbar spine? What was it called? Quantum model. So if you guys take a look in your reading, guess what? You have quantum model. You guys know you can get quantum model. Quantum means number. Model means it doesn't look right. So you have this insufficient amount of x-rays that are going to make this image look funky. And it's modeled. It's going to be grainy. So you can have quantum model in x-ray imaging. You can have quantum model in fluoroscopic images. And you can have quantum model occur in CT images as well. Because in CT, we use an x-ray tube that goes around the patient. All right. So anything that you have an x-ray system producing x-rays, and if it's not enough x-rays reaching the detector, you can end up with quantum model. So again, quantum model can occur, and it's due from not having enough x-ray exposure reach the detector. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about SOD now. SSD, source to skin distance. Okay. So I want to talk about some safety features here. So we said that you can have the x-ray tube in the x-ray table underneath, right? So here's your tube. I'm going to do two. I'm going to do two here. I'm going to make it closer. So let's say we're working with the C-arm and we bring the x-ray table down. And here we bring the x-ray table up away. Here is the intensifier. Here's the intensifier here. So let's say we're working either with a fixed unit or a C-arm. It doesn't matter. It's preferred to have the x-ray tube down underneath, right? So take a look here, you guys. Here's the object. The object is the patient, correct? Here is the source of x-rays, correct? Now, this distance, source to object distance, we said it was SOD, correct? But now I want you guys to use the term source to skin distance. It's the distance from the source to the object, correct? Source to the skin. So when you're talking about fixed fluoroscopy systems, your SSD should be 15 inches. What would that be in centimeters? What would that be in centimeters? So 15 times, how do we convert that to centimeters? Well, 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch, right? So if there's 15 inches, we do 15 times 2.54, we should get 38 centimeters, right? Now, we have a mobile, if you're using a C-arm, mobile fluoroscopic exams, mobile fluoroscopy, you're going to have an SSD of no less than 12 inches. So 12, all right? So 12 times 2.54 is 30. So that'll be 30 centimeters. Now, take a look here. If you go ahead and you bring the x-ray tube closer to the skin, what's going to happen is you're going to have more magnification and you're going to have more dose. All right, so I'm going to write that down. If you decrease your source to skin distance, all right, you're going to have an increase of magnification, but you're going to increase patient skin dose as well because you're bringing the x-ray tube closer to the patient. If you increase your SSD, which I have here in this image, you're going to get less magnification, but you're going to have less patient skin dose, correct? So we try not to bring it less than 12 inches. We try to maximize the SSD. So take a look here. You want the intensifier closer to the patient, of course, with not interfering with the procedure, but you want to increase your SSD. You see this here? Okay, so your SOD, you want to increase your source to skin distance. So you're going to have a happier patient. All right. So when you do this x-ray here, you're going to get less magnification and less dose to the patient. All right. Okay. So we got to understand that. Now, we said if you decrease your SSD, you're going to have more magnification, but it's going to increase patient skin dose, correct? But it's going to decrease vignetting, and that's going to increase spatial resolution. All right. So if you increase your source of skin distance, you're going to have less magnification, less skin dose, but guess what's going to happen? You're going to have more vignetting, and that's going to decrease spatial resolution. All right. So that's in the reading, but I'm trying to break it down for you guys. All right. Now, the last thing here is the way the images are being recorded or being presented to the system to be demonstrated on the display monitor. So there's two different ways that we can have it. All right. So here's your x-ray tube. X-rays go up. They go through the patient. They're going to hit the intensifier tube, we said, correct? Then it's going to go to a video camera system. So there's something called a video camera system. This is old school, right? This is old school right here. Video camera systems where you have light converted into electrons, and those electrons are then converted to light again, and then electrical charge again. It's weird. All right. So there's all these conversions, right? So the video camera systems are older in technology, but it's what we first started out with. And they would have a device called an ADC connected to it that was sent to the computer for processing and display on the monitor. So this was our first system. Then they had another system. Here's your x-ray tube. Here's your x-rays. Here's your patient. Here's your intensifier tube. But then they started going digital on us, and they introduced something called a matrix array. The matrix array was full of CCDs, charge coupled devices. So there would be a scintillator, right? You would have light being produced, right? That light would be captured by the CCDs, and then the charge coupled devices are connected to an ADC and then sent to the computer for processing. Well, now the brand new systems are called flat panel detectors. All right, so a flat panel detector now, you have the x-ray tube. X-rays are going to come out. Here's your patient. But guess what? There's no more intensifier tube. They have an FPD, just like what we have in our lab. They have a flat panel detector system that's full of what we call TFTs, thin film transistors. And we're going to review that today. So now there's a system called the flat panel detection system, and it looks like this. So it eliminates the intensifier tube. And when it eliminates the intensifier tube, you don't have that concave surface anymore. So you actually don't have vignetting at all. And because the detection system is very sensitive to X-ray radiation, right? You don't need to have that intensifier to amplify the light signal anymore. So it's actually more efficient. So all your brand new C-arm systems are called flat panel detector systems. They have what's called digital subtraction, where you can actually subtract various objects and only have, let's say you want to look at vessels, you want to get rid of the bone, the muscle, the fat. You can actually hit digital subtraction for vascular or arterial imaging, and you can see the vessels, all right, which is pretty cool. We had digital subtraction in MRI and in CT as well. So again, there's all these cool little features that we can utilize with fluoroscopy and technology now, especially with digital imaging. That formula on page 455, you guys can go ahead and go over that, and I'll go ahead and talk about it in image production a little bit here, all right, because it affects resolution, all right. But here you go, you guys. But this is what we covered, right? Back in the days, we had a video camera system, and there was all these other materials like Plumicon and Vitacon, not Vicodin, right? Vitacon, Plumicon, and you have the electron gun. This is old school. And then we went to digital, and they used CCD's matrix array connected to the intensifier. But now, the new systems have a flat panel detector, and it eliminates the intensifier too. All right. So let's recap. We went over SSD, source to skin distance. Talked about how it affects magnification and spatial resolution, vignetting. And then we have the use of a large input phosphor screen. We went over what that does. And then we went over your basic terms in fluoroscopy.